Hello, everyone. My name is Kiarash, and good afternoon. I know that you're waiting for this moment and for this panel for a few hours or even a few days when you saw the flyer of this event. And guess what? Finally, we are here discussing about quantum computers and post-quantum security. For this panel, we have two amazing panelists and one student policy proposer, which I'm going to introduce to you. Our first panelist is Jean-François Biasse, who is a professor of mathematics at the University of South Florida. He has published more than 18 conference papers, more than 18 journal papers, and he's really skilled in post-quantum cryptography. And one of his works, which is called LES, has been accepted to the second round of competition for post-quantum cryptography, which I want to congrats. Jean?
Thank you.
Our second panelist is Roger Grimes, who is a data-driven defense evangelist at KnowBe4. He has more than 35 years of experience in computer security, and he has published more than 15 books and 1,500 articles. Probably those who have read the book Hacking the Hackers probably know him very well. Roger?
Glad to be here.
And finally, we have our student policy proposer, Michael Dileonardo, who is a student of international relations and intelligence studies at USF. He is also a junior research associate at Security Management International. Michael?
Thank you very much.
Okay, so for today's talk, before we start, I just want to point out some notes that we want to start with our policy proposer, Michael, and then for 10 minutes, and then we will dedicate some time to ask the panelists to give their thoughts on the policy. Then we will start our second phase of our panel, which is Q&A, and I wanna ask you to leave your questions for the second phase, and also we have some mic runners. If you have any question, you can ask them, and they will give you a microphone that you can ask your questions. Okay, so Michael, we can start with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. I can skip over that, save some time. I wanted to start today with a little icebreaker because quantum is a big word and sometimes it's presented in a scary way, and I don't fully understand it. As he said, I'm an IR student, right? I'm a mostly defense and intelligence student, but I think that a lot of the things we're talking about on these stages today impact us no matter what field it is. So whether it's international relations and our bilateral multinational ties, our defense ties, or our economic ties, this is going to impact us, whether it's this stage or any of these stages. So I just wanted to do a little icebreaker, and hopefully this doesn't offend the guys up here. But raise your hand if you really think you know, or if you could come up here and explain what quantum computing even is. Okay, we got maybe like one hand, two hands, right? So that's where I was at a few weeks ago. And so I did what any good college student would do nowadays, and I asked my artificially intelligent friend what the heck quantum computing is. And this is the definition that I got, is that quantum computing is an innovative form of computing that leverages quantum mechanic principles like superposition to perform computations exponentially faster than classical computers. So they can get into exactly what that is after me. But the point of that is that post-quantum encryption compromises contemporary cryptographic methods. That's the threat. That's the threat that I want to propose policy in regards to. But first, I want to outline exactly what that threat could look like, particularly to our national security. Obviously, our adversaries, not just near-peer state competitors like China or Russia, but also non-state actors, ones that are possibly cooperating with the intelligence agencies in those nations. They could use that post-quantum hacking and cryptographic methods to expose state secrets, hack into defense technology, whether it's in DoD's hands or in our corporations' hands. They could directly affect hardware and operation sabotage, as well as our critical infrastructure, our energy infrastructure. But that threat doesn't just exist to the United States. Obviously, it exists to our allies. And the key area I wanted to hone in on with my policy proposal is the threat that extends to the intelligence and the data and the hardware that we share with our allies, some very critical. You may be familiar with the fact that the Joint Strike Fighter program, the F-35, that was built up from the ground as a multinational program. We share tons of data, and we've sold dozens and dozens of that fighter aircraft to plenty of allies. So we may live in a world where we're post-quantum secure in our cryptography, but our allies who share our data, who share our hardware, may not be. That still leaves us vulnerable, whether it be our intelligence or our hardware. And a great example of that as well is NATO or the Five Eyes or intelligence sharing organizations. If as an organization, if that is not quantum secure with its cryptology, then we're just as not secure. Maybe our intelligence agencies are prepared, which they're not, and I think they'll talk about that today, but that still leaves us vulnerable. So I wanted to propose at least an initial solution to formalizing the cooperation that we have with our allies and with our partners. And I thought a good place to start with that is NATO, because that's really our first and foremost, most powerful multinational network that exists for our defense. When terrorism became stronger and a larger global threat, which it really began in the 80s, but of course got worse in the early 2000s with 9/11, we're all familiar with that. One of the first places the United States went was NATO. You know, we used Article 5 to cooperate with our NATO partners overseas and domestically within Europe and North America to secure ourselves against the threat of terrorism. You know, we stood up a counterterrorism center in NATO, and we still rely on a lot of the techniques and the standards and the lessons that we learned together in combating terrorism today. I think we need to do the same thing with quantum, not just in NATO. I think NATO's a start. I think NATO's a place we could start to set global standards. And we can do that by establishing a shared platform, a shared division within NATO, with the thing that already exists in NATO, the Center for Cyber Defense and Excellence. They already have a program there for defense innovation where tons, I think 44 companies are already collaborating on cyber defense and creating what they call a transatlantic quantum community. But that's very informal to me, especially with the level of threat that we're facing and how rapidly that threat is approaching. And I think they'll talk about today. It's already here. So my policy really is to form a joint division within the NATO Cybersecurity Defense and Excellence Center for sharing threat analysis together on quantum threats that exist from state and non-state actors, and cooperating with funds and research to prepare not just the alliance, but individual alliance members. You know, there may be some alliance members like France or like Britain that are further ahead. But what about our smaller partners like Albania or Slovakia that don't have the capability on their own, but they still possess our hardware, they still possess our intelligence, they're still important to the alliance, therefore they're important to our national security. So it's on us as the United States and as NATO as an alliance to help prepare our smaller partners for that threat. Not just for them, because they're our friends and they're our partners, but because they operate critical hardware that can be exposed, thereby making us exposed indirectly through them. And I think that this can be implemented by the United States leading in this regard. And let's just, again, make that clear. It's not just NATO. I think NATO is how we start so that we can lead more in the world. And with some informal conversations I've had with members of the panel, you know, typically that's how it goes. The United States makes a direction, whether it's a cybersecurity thing or somewhere in defense, and a lot of our partners will follow suit. But let's make that cooperation formal. Let's get on it now so we don't have gaps, right? If we're quantum prepared as the United States, what about all of our partners? What about all of our friends? And I think that's really important. So I think formally creating a quantum cryptography division within NATO's Center for Cyber Defense and Excellence is important to our national security and also the global security of the United States, so that our hardware, our troops, our operations, wherever they are, if it has anything to do with allies and partners, we're secure on end to end, not just individually, bilaterally, but with all of our treaty partners. And I just want to end that proposal by making it very clear that when it comes to threats like quantum, or really any threats that are discussed today, I think it's better when we tackle those threats together and we tackle them in cooperation with our friends and with our allies. There are bright minds all across the world who are on our side. We need to work with them to tackle this threat, not on our own. And I think, you know, whether it's this policy I propose today or things that, you know, the panelists will speak about, hopefully we can find, you know, more solutions together with our partners around the world to tackle this. So thank you very much for listening, and thank you to both of you for being here at our university. It means a ton to talk about this. Again, you know, not a lot of us know about this, so hopefully you can shed some light and that can help, you know, form the future of our policy on this issue.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing your policy with us. So I want to ask our panelists to share their thoughts on Michael's proposal. So Roger, I want to start with you to talk about your thoughts.
I like the idea of creating some sort of, whether it's NATO, another group, and trying to get alliances to spread this. But I also would say this, a couple of good notes is I'm on a bunch of quantum working groups, on the Cloud Security Alliance Working Group, the World Economic Council, and they're all very international. Even the post-quantum cryptographic standards were mostly invented by teams that are multinational. So there certainly is a lot of already international participation. I think that really the big question is whether it's NATO or NIST. A lot of people would say NIST, right, would be the kind of the person to push that out there, but I like your idea. But really, it actually even points to that, and this is a big problem. I actually covered it, not to promote my own books, but I just wrote a book called Taming the Hacker Storm, which is about how to fix all hackers' malware in the internet. And one of the problems I put out there is that we really don't have a great way of conveying national and international cooperation. We have all these groups, like even within the cyber community, if you look at like who makes the standards for the internet, it's like 15 different internet bodies, and different ones have different parts of the standard, and they, forever are not agreeing, and you don't know where to go. So I think the overall biggest problem that is actually asked kind of by your question, which is we should have like a national body that's in charge of, internet and cryptographic standards at a national level that then talks to an international body, versus we're trying to figure out what's the best one to do it. It'd be nice if we had this defined pathway, right, for everything, not just the post-quantum stuff. And by the way, post-quantum, you all know about that, right? That is supposedly will soon have sufficiently capable quantum computers that will be able to break a lot of today's most popular encryption and symmetric keys and hashing, stuff like asymmetric mostly, so like RSA, Diffie-Hellman, El-Gamal, and things like that. And it can even crack in half the protective strength of existing symmetric ciphers like Advanced Encryption Standard, AES. And then just the question is it's supposedly going to been possibly going to happen since 1994 when Peter Shor wrote an algorithm showing that quantum computers, when they became sufficiently capable, could break our today's encryption. So we've been waiting for that day. We didn't even get the first quantum computer till 1999, but now we're getting closer and closer to the day where supposedly we'll have these sufficient quantum computers. And so America and the world trying to figure out, hey, we need to move people off of these quantum susceptible ciphers to quantum resistant ciphers. That's the post-quantum cryptography you'll hear about.
Thank you, Roger. John?
Yeah, so to add to what you were saying, I think a lot of the things concerning cryptographic standards are decided at a national level. But at the same time, in cryptography, you don't use cryptography in a vacuum. You have to use the same cryptosystems as the people that you communicate with. And in that sense, NATO cooperation, of course, makes a lot of sense because, well, you need to figure out with the people you communicate with, and in particular your close allies, what are the new cryptographic products that you're going to be using moving forward. And so right now, as Roger was saying, we're sort of at a tipping point that we're going to have to replace some of our cryptographic, especially public key cryptographic protocols, and that's gonna require a lot of cooperation because you can't just decide on your own, I'm gonna be using this, right? You have, at least if Roger and I are having a conversation, Roger has to be on the same page as myself so that we can replace the crypto systems that we're using now.
Thanks, Michael, for sharing your policy, and also Roger and Jean for sharing your thoughts on his policy. So now we move to the second part of our panel, which is Q&A. Feel free to ask any questions if you come up with any questions anytime. We have mic runner, as I said. Yep.
So my question is, in quantum cryptography, where the photons represent binary bits, and then once they're observed, they're changed. Making the system completely secure, is that practical or theoretical right now? And then a follow-up would be, if it is practical, where could we see that technology most utilized? Thank you.
I believe this question will be, how do you describe first of all, how do you want to describe the quantum computers to everyone? And then you can...
All right, yeah, so the way I took it, so quantum cryptography, which is either we can use quantum bits, quantum particles, or any elementary particle that can be further divided or broken down, at least as we know it today. So that's electrons, photons, quarks, things like that. You mentioned photons, and what you mentioned, I think, is that photons and electrons and things can be used in quantum cryptography to protect data streams, that's the future. Like right now we're actually talking about, this is a big misunderstanding, post-quantum ciphers are not quantum. Post-quantum ciphers are just regular binary, traditional, classical things that are resistant to quantum cracking. But in the future, we're probably all going to have quantum cryptography protecting everything. It would just be built into everything we use. There's lots of quantum networks today that are already using quantum encryption. But the idea that you were mentioning that from a theoretical viewpoint, if I'm using a photon or electron or quantum particles, part of that process to encrypt and protect traffic, if somebody observes it or eavesdrops on it, it makes a change so that both people, or they have what's called, Alice and Bob. Alice and Bob are trying to communicate something. And if Eve, the eavesdropper, comes on in, that will disturb the quantum state that's being used to protect whatever secret message they're sending. And the mere observance of that particle, quantum particle, changes its state so that Alice and Bob would know that Eve had done something. By the way, this is a really small point that you won't see in any of the literature. Quantum cryptography doesn't prevent eavesdropping. You can still eavesdrop. It's just that it prevents eavesdropping without Alice and Bob knowing, so that Alice and Bob would always know that it occurred, know they couldn't trust the communication line to continue sending secret information. But there is this theoretical thing that if I have a quantum particle and I'm using it to encrypt stuff, and if somebody eavesdrops and looks at that data that's protected, it will disturb it and they'll know. It's not a theoretical thing. It's absolutely put in use all the time. There's already quantum ciphers and quantum networks and stuff around the world being used and tested, and when people eavesdrop on it, it does create an interruption that they're able to view and say, well, you can't trust that line to send the secret information I'm trying to send, which is usually symmetric encryption keys is what they're trying secretly, because symmetric encryption keys are a lot tougher even for quantum computers to crack. But that's quantum, weird, strange stuff sometimes, or it seems that way because they're just trying to learn how to comprehend it. And if anybody here can't understand quantum encryption, go to YouTube, look at a quantum or quantum encryption video. You're like, oh, I like it. What's that? And you fade off of them, so you open up another video. You're like, yeah, this is the video I should have looked at first. This is it. I got it. I don't got it. And it would be that way through a lot of videos. I remember literally the day that I really understood quantum mechanics and quantum physics really well, that I was running around my house telling my wife, I understand quantum. And she didn't understand. I was like, you don't understand. I've been trying for like a decade, and I finally understand it. So if you're trying to understand it, don't give up. And there's a lot of good books out there you can read. And I talk about and write about it a lot on LinkedIn if you're interested.
Thank you. Jean, you have worked on quantum computers and post-quantum cryptography for many years from theoretical aspects and from mathematical point of view. How do you describe them?
Well, first, I would like to start with a quote from Richard Feynman, who said, if you think you understand quantum then it means you don't. Now, just before I taught my first semester of a quantum computing course here at USF, I double-checked on that citation. Turns out he most likely never said that, but it's just so good he should have, really. But that's one thing. Another thing is, as far as quantum cryptography, you were mentioning, how ready we are, how mature. I think the underlying question was, how mature is this technology? So we do it casually in the labs, and some people sell products about quantum cryptography. I'm involved, for example, in a project where we have a collaborator who's a physicist, and he has in the lab, all the wiring and optic fiber, and is running protocols like this, running experiments. So and in the lab is pretty casual. Now, one thing that I wanted to add is about what we do with quantum cryptography. So Roger already clarified, this is not post-quantum cryptography. It's not meant to be protecting your phone or whatnot from quantum attackers. It's more of a way to leverage quantum technology to do something that is safer than what classical computers could do. And like you said, the goal is to detect an eavesdropper. Perhaps also it's important to mention that the goal is not to protect your communication. The goal is to create a key. So if you and I are going to use quantum cryptography, the goal of this phase where we use optic fibers and photons and everything is for you and I to have a shared key. And what do we do with that? or we're going to default back to using good old AES or other symmetric ciphers to actually encrypt the data. So your photons are not playing any role in encrypting the data. I mean, they are, but they really are here just for you and I to land in a situation where we both have a key that Eve doesn't know about, right? So that's the end game of quantum cryptography. And one thing, and a lot of people are quite upset about it, like so far, there's a lot of hype, it's been a little bit exaggerated, the how good it is, because you still need to authenticate your channels, right? So if you and I are trying to create a shared key, we're going to be able to detect if somebody's trying to eavesdrop, but I'm not going to be able to authenticate you unless we use a digital signature. And what is a digital signature? Well, it's something we're using today. So much for something brand new, a brand new method of encryption that at the heart of it, it relies on a good old digital signature. And we don't know how to use photons to do that. So
Yeah, something to add to that, and great point you made, is that we've actually been selling quantum devices for over 2 decades. Usually what's called quantum key distribution things since like 2000. We've had quantum random number generators. There's quantum random number generators in cell phones that they sell in different parts of the world. What's the big test right now is we're trying to create sufficiently capable quantum computers, which they kind of call all-purpose quantum computers that are capable of cracking today's asymmetric encryption, a lot of it. But we've been like, we've been selling even quantum computers for over a decade. There's a quantum computer out there, I think with 4,000 and something qubits, but it's an annealing computer. That's a type of quantum computer, is annealing, and that type isn't the one that's going to crack the encryption. It's these more general purpose quantum computers that can do more. Those are the ones that are kind of worrying for society, because the encryption that it breaks, I always laugh, say the encryption it breaks is RSA, Diffie-Hellman, Elgamal, and elliptic curve cryptography. Those would be the major asymmetric public key standards that they're supposedly going to be able to break. Well, that accounts for probably 90% of everything we do, at least. It's your Wi-Fi, it's your smart card, it's your multi-factor authentication token, it's the thing protecting your password. And people can it crack Bitcoin? Well, not necessarily the blockchain, but it can crack the digital wallets that are used to interface with it, which means it kind of cracks it. But I'm like, it literally cracks our entire banking system. Bitcoin is not even a sliver of a hair, compared to the whole global economic world center. So we have a lot bigger problems than it cracking Bitcoin.
Thank you for your insights. One question that is also interesting to me, and I'm sure that it can be interesting for you, is that whenever we talk about quantum computers, we look at them as threats. When you look back to the old days when the computers came, we realized that they are coming to make our lives easier. But whenever we talk about quantum computers, they are usually threats. Michael, I want to first start with you, that in your proposal you were mentioning about the threats of quantum computers. Do you think, should we change our view on these computers from more threats than to more opportunities that anyone can use in their lives?
That's a good question, and I think that they can answer it probably better than I can, but you both made me feel a lot better about myself. I still don't understand quantum, but it's been great to dive into it, because I do think the nature of your question, though, like for me as a student of international relations and intelligence studies, not even really knowing like what post-quantum cryptography is and what that world is, having the opportunity to dive into it, to try to learn about it a little bit more, within itself has brought me to learn about things I never thought I would even consider, right? And identifying areas in our transatlantic community, or even within the United States, areas that we have vulnerabilities. I do think with any technology, right, it's always going to be, oh, this is great. This gives us an edge, or this gives us something that can put us ahead. That's always possible that can become a threat from our adversaries. It doesn't matter what it is. So I don't think quantum is unique in the fact that it's both bad and good. That's just the nature of an advancing world, right? I mean, we could look at our cell phones as, oh, this is a great tool for us in our day-to-day society, but there are plenty of downsides. So for one, I think just the nature of having more powerful computers, right? That sounds great to me as a student, as someone approaching the new world. But I think just the nature of your question, I think it's important with any technology, at least in the realm of security and defense. This is great for us, but that means it could be great for somebody else too, and we may not be aligned in our policy. So I'm sure, it goes both ways.
Correct. Roger and Jean, how do you look at those computers? Threats or opportunities?
Sure. So I think what's worth mentioning here is that the drive for the development of quantum computing technologies is the kind of opportunities they will create. The reason why Google, IBM, Microsoft, and all the tech giants are investing millions of dollars in quantum computing is not so that they can break cybersecurity. It's really motivated by making computing better. That said, a lot of the claims that are made out there, to justify those investments typically are overinflated. One of the things for example, one of the things that a lot of people say is like, oh, they're so much more powerful than your regular computers, but that actually isn't true at all. There's only select tasks that we know a quantum computer will do better than what our regular computers know how to do, right? And for the rest, we can actually make the point that they're slower. I mean, not slower, but at least less efficient, because they actually have to operate under some constraints that are due to quantum physics. So, for example, like an addition, needs to be reversible. So, for a quantum computer to do 2 + 2 = 4, it needs to be able to somehow from 4 go back to 2 and 2. But if I just give you 4, could be 3 + 1, could be 4 + 0, and it could be 2 + 2. So you have to actually fiddle with the memory to make the process reversible, which actually makes the quantum computer less efficient than a regular computer. But there's a few select tasks that we know how to solve with a quantum computer way better than what a classical computer would do. So for example, a quantum search, if I give you a list of 100 names of students, and I say one of these students has a GPA of 4.0, you need to find that, right? So with your regular computer, what you would do is you go down the list name by name, and on average, you would have to check the GPA of 50 students. Everybody accepts that, right? If the list is 100 names, well, with a quantum computer, on average, you would check only 10 names. So how would you do that? That's impressive, right? I'm not going to get into the details of that, but that specific task of searching, the quantum computer does it super efficiently somehow, much more efficiently than your classical computer. Now, the problem is, not everything is about searching. If I tell you what I really want is to solve a quadratic equation, x² plus something times x equals blah, 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 right? Well, you could do that by searching, take all the x's, and then go down the list. Oh, first x, does it satisfy my equation? Yes, no, and you could go down the list and use your quantum computer. Good for you. But also, you remember from grade 10 calculus, there's a formula for that gives you the answer in one step. So why would you use a quantum computer? So quantum computers are good at certain things, but not everything, right? And for a lot of the people trying to tell you to invest in quantum computing will tell you they're so massively more powerful than regular computers. That's probably not true.
Let me ask y'all, this is a great bar question to bet a beer over. What percentage of the world's computers today are quantum computers, work on quantum? 100%. Like everything in the entire world only works because of quantum and quantum mechanics. We know for sure that classical, traditional binary computers only work because of the underlying quantum stuff. Everything works on quantum. And people go, hey, do you think one day we'll have quantum on a chip? Yes, because we already have quantum on a chip. They're like, oh, do you think we'll ever be able to work without having these super cooled and big rooms? Yes, because our brain is a very wet, warm, bouncy place. It works on quantum. Everything only works because of quantum. The difference is between today's computer and quantum computers, true quantum computers, as we talk about them, is that quantum computers not only work on quantum, but actually can store, process, and make decisions and logic gates using quantum particles. So that they can input some quantum information in at the quantum, and actually the properties of quantum information. So if we talk about your photon, the quantum photon, we're looking to see if that photon, is it spinning right, is it spinning left, is it doing this, and we'll say, well, if it spins right, we'll say that it's a 1. If it spins left, we'll say that it's a 0 or whatever. But just know, all computers work on quantum. It's just that we want to actually track, store, compute information using the property of quantum particles. That's what's different. Quantum is going to, once we finally get sufficiently capable quantum computers, there's going to be all kinds of amazing inventions. And although I do love that you corrected the myth, quantum computers can't do everything faster. For sure, everything is limited by the speed of light. And that essentially means that quantum computers are not going to be faster at everything than a regular computer. And simple things, forget the quadratic equation. I like your first example, 2 + 2, faster on a classical computer than a quantum computer. But there are certain types of things coming. If you look on Google or look on Wikipedia, they tell you there's 20 quantum algorithms. Really, right now there's only 2 main ones: Shor's algorithm, Peter Shor's algorithm, and Grover's algorithm. And basically, everything we're solving today is based upon those 2 algorithms. For sure, in the future, we're going to have different algorithms that can do more things, and they are going to allow us to do some incredible things. I think, and like I say, the world's oil companies have had quantum teams looking to better find, fuel deposits, oil and stuff like that for over a decade. They think it's going to significantly improve medicine, significantly improve chemicals. We'll be able to have biological medicines that are just particular for us. The current saying is right now with our classical modeling, we can only follow a molecule, a couple atoms of a molecule through 8 steps, and then it gets to be too much for our classical computers to comprehend. But quantum computers can follow millions of molecules through millions of changes. And so that should drastically change our world. There's a very, very good chance. I was born before the internet. I remember what was life before the internet. If you asked me to describe what the internet was going to bring to us, I could have never described that. Every bit of music that I love will not only fit on my phone or my iPod or whatever I was using, but is in the cloud and follows me around the world. And then I can ask my cell phone any question. What was that movie Robin Williams was in when he pretended to be a doctor and it brings back Patch Adams? Would have never known this. Quantum is going to be the same thing. It's going to bring us all kinds of inventions and services we cannot imagine. I for sure think that quantum is going to be as revolutionary to us as the internet was and as AI is today. I think quantum is going to be just as startling, just as bringing us all these new things. The reason why it's the first time that we're going to be able to model how nature truly acts. It's all been approximations of how nature acts. Quantum computers actually work at the lowest level of how nature acts, and we finally have the ability to model that and model it upstream.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. We have questions from audience.
Kind of pivoting from tech giants that are pioneering quantum technology and how quantum technology or principles of physics can be used to derive logic gates for computers. How can we avoid companies trademarking principles of physics to build certain logic gates for computers while respecting intellectual property?
That's a great question.
Is that a legal question? So I'm not a patent expert, but I'm pretty sure you can't patent principles of physics.
Can you patent an algorithm? I think you can.
Yes,
right?
I have.
Oh, there you go. So that would be my biggest thing, is if someone comes with this great algorithm that does the solution it's patented and you can't use it, that would be a big deal.
So maybe, I know it's not exactly the question you've asked, but NIST, the US standardization body, really hates it when people patent cryptographic algorithms. And it's just because they see that, it's not that it's forbidden, but they see that as a barrier to the broad adoption, because that's what NIST promotes, is we're going to have a standard and everybody's going to use this standard of encryption. But then if there's a patent, then you have to pay, the fees to use it. So usually what happens is when NIST has a standard, typically right now they're trying to develop new standards for encryption and signature schemes that will resist quantum computers, and they're paying extra attention to the patents that surround the candidates for that they're trying to standardize.
Yeah, before you could submit your algorithm, your cryptographic algorithm for it to be consideration as a NIST standard, you had to sign a piece of paper saying you're giving up the ability to control the intellectual property around it. And there were actually some good candidates where they didn't want to do it, or they only wanted to do it for like 20 years or 30 years. And NIST said no. Although if you've heard of elliptic curve cryptography, that's actually something that was patented, and then the group said you can have it, and use it for a while. RSA is patented, so but they gave it away. For a while, they're going to sue people that were using it, and they went, hey, if we let it, everybody use it, we can make more of it and become billionaires, and that's what happened. But I think it's a very interesting question. But I would say that's all technology, right? All technology can be evil and good. All technology is going to have some rat bastard somewhere saying, I'm going to make a great idea, and then not share it or charge a ton of money. And that's everything, not just quantum. But I think great question.
If you have one more question, yeah.
So, my name is Josiah. I go to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and I'm majoring in computer science while also minoring in applied mathematics. So, I wanted to talk about your policy proposal real quick, because you did mention that kind of offloading, the work and the research of quantum computing to NATO, and I like the idea. And I know when it comes to the military, for example, like GPS, they kind of started looking at that, and then they brought it, and then now we all have GPS on our phones. You can look at the internet. They kind of had an early version of sending data between different military groups. The thing is that when you were talking about quantum computing, you said that it could kind of crack 90% of the cryptography stuff that we have implemented in our systems right now. My question to you guys is, with giving this to the military and to NATO and having them work on quantum computing, as soon as it comes out, how are we actually going to make sure our civilian infrastructures are prepared for this? Because if it just comes out and we have quantum computing, now literally anything can be cracked. How are we going to ensure that our infrastructures and our technologies that currently run on current things are prepared for this quantum?
For sure, 30 years from now, there'll be a ton of people that are not prepared and still using the old stuff and being cracked at will. That's every single vulnerability we've ever had in our lives. But I will say NIST is leading a program called the Post-Quantum Cryptography Program, setting new standards with NIST and the NSA that all the government agencies and people that work with the government are supposed to follow, and really in general, civilian populations follow that too. Microsoft, Google, and stuff like that are already working on it. So if you're paying attention, by the way, if you don't know this, in the next couple of years, you're going to have to upgrade every piece of software and hardware you have to be using post-cryptographic standards. But most of it's going to be taking care of it. It's just going to happen especially if you're using a cloud product or something, and when you buy a new iPhone or whatever. But for sure, I've been doing this 36 years, and some of the stuff I saw as vulnerabilities 36 years ago, still all over the internet, easy to exploit. Humanity is an interesting thing about where some people are like, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to upgrade.
So, I'm sorry.
Maybe one thing that I'd like to add is that we may have already set the stage to being hacked by quantum computers in the future, depending on the shelf life of the data that we're encrypting today. There's this thing called harvest now, decrypt later. So if sensitive data is supposed to stay secure for a very long time, then in fact we've already been hacked. It just hasn't happened yet,
right? But
it will, because what's done is done now, and if it has to stay secure for an extra 20 years or 30 years, and by then the quantum computer is already ready to be used, and then it means it will be hacked in the future.
Got you. With that being said, just once again, going talking about data and stuff like that, you said it's going to revolutionize, and I'm honestly just really curious because the quantum stuff, and personally I'm interested in statistics and stuff like that, but like the policy proposal, don't know that much about it. Is there anything with regards to like once again, civilian infrastructure, that quantum, like what, do you have any like your best idea about how it will revolutionize?
Yeah, I got lots of ideas. I mean,
you tell
first of all,
me
it's going to make weather prediction more accurate. Like right now, every year with hurricane season coming upon us, like hurricane's coming, and we think it's going to hit in this, 200 mile, they have that cone of where the hurricane's going to hit, and then, you're wondering, is it going to go west coast, east coast, and as it gets closer and closer, they narrow it down. It seems lately, since I moved to Tampa, it's hitting Tampa. Like I don't need a quantum computer anymore. It just seems to hit near Tampa. But also things like traffic management, as we go to full self-driving vehicles, that will happen one day. We'll probably not own cars, not have parking lots. Everybody will be calling the car service to come pick them up to go everywhere. But you're not even going to have traffic lights because the cars are going to slow down and speed up as they're coming to intersections and figure out how much to slow down and speed up so everybody gets to go through without stopping. That's going to take quantum to do. That's not possible to do at scale using classical computers. I think the figure I heard, this is an amazing figure, is that if you want to store all the information that man has ever created, all content, all media would fit on something like 78 qubits. Just an amazing amount of stuff that can be done once we get sufficiently capable quantum computers. Hey, one more fact where you can blow your friends away. You always hear about quantum computers. It replaces the binary ones and zeros, right? So we get a quantum particle, and we say if it spins right, it's a 1. If it spins left, it's a 0 or whatever, and superposition can be all things at all times. Quantum computers can actually be made, they can do 3, 4, and 5, and 10, and 78 things all at once. We're only doing it right now. The current computer is being modeled as being somewhat binary. So it's a quantum computer being modeled to act as a digital binary thing. But we're very quickly going to go, we need to measure 3 properties or 3 measure values. So maybe it's right, left, or up and down, and now I have 4. Oh my God, give me 78 4-state quantum qubits, and I am just solving the world. It's going to be amazing things that you all are going to live through. I just can't imagine. But it's going to be, good and bad, but I think a lot of terrific stuff. We brought Tang, we brought, all the things we love today. A lot of that came through the military stuff. If we survive through it.
All right, thank you guys.
I think he started a great chat. I think we have a question back there.
Right now, we do not have sufficiently capable quantum computers that are attacking people yet. It's all theoretical. Right now, your wristwatch and your cell phone has far more power than any known quantum computer. Although I'm probably one of the few people on Earth, I give it a 15% chance either the US or China has developed sufficiently capable quantum computers, and they just haven't told us. Although I've been saying it for a long time, but one day I'll be right, like a broken clock is right. But interesting now, President Biden's last executive order on the way out of the White House included a sentence that said that all U.S. government agencies should be prepared in post-quantum as soon as possible. Prior to that one sentence, the math was you need to be prepared by 2030. And I was like, whoa, President Biden was probably not a quantum expert, probably didn't follow the quantum world as much as we do. And all of a sudden, he's got a sentence saying that all government agencies need to be prepared ASAP, which is not the same as saying 2030. So I think the U.S. government knows something that we don't, but that's just my opinion.
So if the question was about what can we do now with quantum computers, what can we do now? Maybe the right question is what can we do now that we can't do with normal computers? And the answer to that is nothing. And the reason for that is because the unit of quantum memory we call the qubit, we don't know how to build one qubit that is not prone to errors coming from the environment. So we can't stabilize a qubit long enough to do anything interesting with a quantum computer. So when you hear Google or IBM or other companies say I have X many qubits, they're noisy qubits, and we don't know how to carry out a useful computation on these kind of architectures. So it tells you something, you input a question, and it tells you an answer, but it's usually not really useful, right? So it sort of works, it's sort of quantum, but there's a lot of errors that makes it unreliable for any useful application. And the quest for quantum supremacy is the quest for finally finding a problem where when we put side by side a classical computer and a quantum computer actually performs better.
So I think just last week they finally found one. So there's only been, as far as I know, only 3 times where, and Google was 2 of the times, and I forget the third person, Amazon or something, said, hey, we created a problem that that only a quantum computer could solve in a realistic amount of time. And the first 2 times, it was quickly proved that the classical computer could equate to what it did or somewhat near what it did. But I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe last week it was Google or somebody finally said they created a problem that only a quantum computer could solve, and people agreed. It was like something, they were doing something for cars. It had to do with car manufacturing, something strange in there. So we might have had our first problem that a quantum computer truly solved, and I just keep waiting for them to go, oh no, we can do it classically too, but.
Yeah, just to add to something. It's like what happens usually is that for anything truly useful, our classical computers are better. So then the quantum computer manufacturers, they're thinking, what kind of crazy problem could I solve with a quantum computer? Usually it revolves around the idea of a quantum computer simulating another quantum computer, something that nobody cares about. But there's a hope that your quantum computer somehow outperforms your classical one. And then typically what happens right after, say, Google announces quantum supremacy is that people will start looking at that crazy problem that they came up with to benchmark, classical and quantum computers, and they're going to say, well, look, this thing has never been looked at by people because nobody cared about that computational problem, and suddenly a few weeks later you'll find a better algorithm that works on a regular computer, and that works better than what Google's done.
Yeah. So I think D-Wave just last week announced this one. D-Wave is at annealing. I'm an old man. I couldn't remember the name at first, but D-Wave has had a quantum computer for like a decade, and they're up to like 4,000 qubits. And D-Wave just worked. I think it was a car manufacturer, but they finally came up with a problem where the people involved said, yeah, it went from a week or 2 of time to solve this problem, and they had to solve it for a whole bunch of times, and now we can do it in like 10 minutes or something. Although it's on the D-Wave computer, so that's an annealing type of computer, and that isn't going to threaten us cryptographically. It's a specialized type of quantum computer, but I think we just had our first. And if it stays, if someone doesn't fake that it can be broken classically just as fast, it would be cool to be the first one. I mean, in a long time or ever.
Historically, D-Wave's claims had to be taken with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
The first versions of the D-Wave computer, it was a closed box. Nobody was allowed to look into it. And it took a long time for them to actually let other people independently benchmark the performance of their products.
I agree completely with all of that. It's like trying to any Chinese claim where they've broken something, just give it a couple days.
D-Wave is Canadian.
Yeah, but I think that the car manufacturer said this actually did save us time. And I haven't heard that it's been disproven yet, but you're exactly right. The early braggarts are often overturned.
Crazy stuff going on. Yeah.
Hello. In terms of protecting data as far as civilians go, would you recommend any best practices we should be implementing today to help mitigate the harvest and now decrypt later things, e.g. password managers or subscribing to security firms that help monitor your data online, etc.?
Followed NIST standards?
Yeah, so if you're worried about quantum attacks, there's 6 to 8 ways that you can prevent that. But like one way is to use quantum key distribution, which again has been around for about 2 decades. That would help you protect networks. Certainly don't have the data if you don't need it. Don't transport it or put it in a way that it can be eavesdropped would be, that's a lot of what the government does is don't let it be sniffable or eavesdroppable, that sort of thing. You can also protect it with hardware-based solutions that protect it physically, not using encryption, but specialized physical hardware. That's for short runs, that sort of stuff. You could today start using post-quantum cryptography if you wanted to. A lot of people believe the future is going to be dual encryption, that you'll encrypt it using classical encryption and also post-quantum encryption. because there has been, unfortunately, during this whole process of trying to come up with our post-quantum cryptographic standards, a lot of the ones we were just getting ready to choose, people found, oh, I can break that not only with a quantum computer, but I can break it with a laptop in a day, which is very unusual in the crypto world. So there's going to be what's called dual use. A lot of, we're going to encrypt it classically, we're going to encrypt it post-quantum. So there's like, again, at least 6 ways. I wrote a white paper for the Cloud Security Alliance called Practical Preparations in the Post-Quantum World, and it has all the ways and what you should be. By the way, any business you belong to should already have a committee formed and someone in charge of looking at post-quantum cryptography and everything. You should already be inventorying all of your confidential data that you need to keep encrypted for a certain period of years, and be looking to see what the encryption algorithm and the key size, and trying to figure out what I need, if when post-quantum comes out, can I just upgrade it? Do I need to replace it? Yada, yada, yada. But so your practical preparations of post-quantum world, that white paper will tell you. But again, it's like, so to protect yourself against quantum attacks, you can even today use post-quantum encryption standards of some sort. You can protect the information so it's not eavesdropped on. You can use quantum key distribution, and you can physically try to protect, and I've got some other options in there as well.
One question is that when it comes to the process of standardizations like NIST that you mentioned that we should follow NIST, for instance, many agencies like NSA, when they say to use this kind of encryption scheme, many people think that there might be some backdoor. Do you think that I'm sure that there are many groups around the world who is working on the transition from pre-quantum to post-quantum cryptography. Do you think, for now, for US, do you think we can trust NIST?
Do you say NIST? Trust NIST?
Yes.
Oh. Well, I mean, maybe there's should be some background information for the audience. Like, why would we not trust NIST? There's historical instances of the NSA managing to get, well, for example, NIST to standardize in this, I think, dual ECC. So basically, getting to NIST to standardize weak elliptic curves, right? So there is this public key crypto system based on elliptic curves, and it was backdoored. So what that meant is that the NIST standard could be attacked by the NSA. And of course, it's really bad for so many reasons. One of them being that there's not just the NSA in the end who figures that out. There's also other people who will realize it as well. So it means it's deliberately weak. Now, as far as, so I think people have learned from those mistakes, at least for as far as public standardization processes. Like, I'm involved right now in a team that has submitted a candidate for the current ongoing standardization process with NIST, and I can guarantee you that none of us is in touch with the NSA about any of that. So that's not proof that other teams aren't, but the chances are that dual ACC story really made people aware that they should not mess with public standards.
Yeah, that's a great answer. So yeah, there's been at least 2 or 3 instances where NIST, because of the NSA, weakened or put a backdoor in previous cryptographic standards, right? Now, a big believer in past behavior is a great indicator of future behavior. But I really don't know if there's if you're to say, well, I don't trust NIST, if you're a company or something like that, you really have no choice because they're considered the de facto public standard. But you could, if you wanted to, decide you're going to use the Russian or Chinese answers. You know, and then you have to decide, am I going to trust my own country or an adversarial country and that sort of stuff. But I will say that everybody I talked to is trying to make it as secure as possible. I was an acquaintance with the guy that found the random number generator backdoor when I was at Microsoft. That was pretty wild. And when they weakened DES, data encryption standard, back in the day, and it was actually known that people like, you are weakening the standard, so it's not always invisible, and it was many times found quite quickly. But the real problem.
May I interject?
Yeah.
Because you just said NSA weakened DES. Mm-hmm. They did the opposite. So they've actually contributed input to the design of the DES, but actually to make it stronger. But the way they made it stronger by modifying the S boxes, which are elements of the design that break linearity, suggests that they knew about linear attacks before it became public. But they gave the right suggestions to make it as resilient as possible against linear attacks.
Oh, my
But they
understanding-
knew, but it feels like they knew how to
They
attack it.
decreased the key size. The key size was supposed to be bigger, and they decreased it from an effective length of 64 to 56.
All right, so yeah, so that is that, but that's not sneaky. That everybody knows about the key size. That's a public sort of parameter, but they did contribute some insight to the design of specific building blocks of the DES in a very, very sneaky way, because it just said you should use those S boxes, and they didn't tell anybody why.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years
And
ago.
it made it stronger, but also it suggested that they knew about certain attacks and then just keeping it for themselves.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, they were like, everybody's got to upgrade from RSA to ElGaMao or elliptic curve cryptography. And then a year or two later, they just came out and said, nobody should be using elliptic curve cryptography, or we're not going to tell you why. We're like, we'll take that as a hint. Yeah, that's wild. I didn't know about the S-Box stuff. So.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. I'm going to wrap up this panel by asking all of our panelists and also our policy proposer to share their final thoughts. Some questions that we all might have is that, is it late to start? Or some people may say that investing in such transition doesn't really worth. What's your final thoughts and what do you want to tell them? John, I want to start with you.
Well, something I already said earlier is that you don't do cryptography in a vacuum. So if everybody around you has transitioned to post-quantum cryptography, then you will need to use post-quantum cryptography to communicate with them.
That's great. If you have any questions, want to know more about quantum, you can always go to internet, YouTube, all that sort of stuff. You can also email me, rogerg@knowbefore.com, and I'll send you links and documents and stuff like that. I do that 100 times a day. But I will say this about post-quantum cryptography and stuff like that. Every single organization should be preparing right now for the post-quantum transition. It's coming. It's going to be a huge Y2K-like problem, and we just don't know when it's going to happen. But it is going to happen sooner or later, I think sooner. And if your organization, you belong to clubs, anything online, if they're not thinking about post-quantum cryptography, preparations and migration, they need to be thinking about it. If you've got products that you want, like if you're using some encrypted phone app like Signal or something like that, you need to be looking to see what they're going to do to be migrating to post-quantum encryption standards. We need to push the vendors. I've actually been through a whole bunch of cryptographic migrations, like from DES to AES and SHA-1 to SHA-2. The vendors are really slow. They got to be pushed by the customers. So make sure that you're being an advocate for yourself and your organization, and you should already be doing a post-quantum cryptography project if you're an organization or a company. It is already now late. So make sure if your company doesn't have a project that they get a project. And thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you. Michael, also, what do you want to emphasize from inside your policy?
Just building on what Jean said, we don't live in a vacuum on any of these issues. And one thing I've learned being a student at USF in particular, we have such a multinational student base. Like, I've worked with students in a professional and in an academic capacity that are from probably every continent in the world minus Antarctica, and it's been the greatest blessing of being a student here. So I think whether it's quantum or whatever issue it is, but particularly to this panel with quantum security and in reference to our national security with our allies, we should tackle it together. There are minds all across the world that are our friends, that are our partners. We can't tackle this alone. And if we do tackle it alone, we're going to leave our hardware and our intelligence and our data in the hands of people that aren't quantum prepared, even though we are. But also, we can be better prepared ourselves by working with our friends and our allies. So just like we do here at USF, just like we do across the country, we need to work with our friends across the world on any of these issues that we talk about today. So.
Thank you. I want to thank our panelists and also our policy proposer for sharing their experience and thoughts. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. Other than that, we are done. Thank you for attending this panel.